Good evening. It's June 22nd, 2020. We have two meetings tonight. The first is a public hearing in front of the Urbana City Council, and this is a hearing for the proposed annual budget for the city of Urbana in the county of Champaign, state of Illinois, for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. It was on file and was available for public inspection on the city's website. So I'd like to call this hearing to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown.
Here.
I've got it, Wendy. Okay. Colbrook.
Here.
Percy.
Yeah, here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next item on the agenda is public input. Does anyone wish to provide verbal input at this hearing? Okay.
Mayor, is this when we come in?
No, we have to do the public hearing first, Ms. Pearson.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Diane?
Yes.
I got a lot of, I don't know if anybody else did, emails for public input regarding, this is about the budget, right?
Correct.
So there was a lot of emails.
Yes, we all received them.
Okay, so I didn't know if you were.
Yes, we've got them all.
Okay.
Emily McCown.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Dear Alder people, aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of staying up late at city council meetings? Aren't you tired of staying up late just to pretend to listen to public input? We, the people of Urbana, are generously offering our input on how we can defund our current militarized police department and build in its stead a department of social workers and mental health first responders. And we have seen the opposite from you with the proposed budget for this year. We, the people of Urbana, have demanded you drop the charges against Aaliyah Lewis, and you didn't listen. Her court date is in the morning. We've demanded you reject the reappointment of Seraphin, and you shunned us as we rallied outside the city building. We ask you now tonight to reject this budget proposal and make a new one that cuts police spending by 50% and allocates those funds to social services. Can you hear us now? We are not letting up. The small checks on police, like the CPRB and de-escalation trainings, do not actually measure up to the needs of our community. They may be well-intentioned, but the crisis is far larger than those tiny reforms. Historically and currently, the police have left a violent impression on us. They have broken the trust of our community and our nation, whether it was Aaliyah who was punched for asking a question, or it was peaceful protesters getting run down by a police car. The police broke our trust again and again. When the community rightfully reacts with such great fear to our first responders, how will we ever have productive and healthy solutions when conflicts arise? Can you hear us now? Are you tired? We're not tired. You have chosen to represent us and have failed to do so on this issue thus far. Now is your chance before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Tomlinson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
The budget states that public safety is a top priority, so let's talk about public safety. Last year, the city spent $10.8 million on policing. That was 30.2% of their total budget. This year, despite the total budget decreasing over $1 million, the city wants to spend $11.2 million on policing. They want to give the police a budget increase of almost $500,000. Can you imagine that? In the wake of the George Floyd protests and daily videos of cops beating and shooting protesters unprovoked across the nation, this city council wants to give the cops a big fat raise. Well, you say to yourself, none of that stuff happens in Urbana. We have good cops. If you think police brutality isn't happening in Urbana, you must not be familiar with the name of Aaliyah Lewis. In April of this year, she yelled at police officers from a distance during the arrest of her boyfriend following a domestic dispute. Apparently, verbal disagreement in Urbana is illegal because an officer runs over to violently restrain her. She twists away from him, and this prompts 2 other police officers to tackle her to the ground and start beating her. One of the cops beating her has an assault rifle that swings over her head and body during the attack. He later points it at her head as she lays on the ground. This is not how it's reported in the news or in the fictional police report. They report Aaliyah as the aggressor, but we know the news and police reports are lying because there is a 7-minute video of the incident online showing the attack from start to finish. Strangely, this very city council found no wrongdoing on the part of the police, despite presumably seeing the same video I did, where Aaliyah is screaming in pain as 3 large men punch her repeatedly after she is restrained for, what, shouting? She did not approach the cops. She did not attack them. They escalated from her shouting to physical violence and arrest. She spent a week in jail before making bail. Aaliyah has a court date tomorrow for 3 counts of aggravated battery. So let's talk about public safety. Is public safety 3 thugs with guns showing up to a domestic dispute call and beating and arresting those involved? Is it the fatal shooting of 15-year-old Kiwan Carrington by Champaign police? How does this make our community safe? The thing is, almost everyone I talk to is afraid of the police to some degree. You're driving along and you notice a cop in your rear view mirror. You're doing absolutely nothing wrong, but you triple check your speed and make sure you use your blinker and keep glancing at the mirror because there's a stranger driving behind you with a gun who can make you stop your vehicle, who can jail you or execute you with no repercussion, who can make up a fictional narrative about what happened, has the police, union, and city behind them and qualified immunity. Police don't prevent crime. They often don't solve crime. What function do they really serve other than generating the city income by writing traffic tickets? I can really only think of a handful of extreme scenarios where I'd want a guy with a gun to show up to fix my problem. Most of the problems the police are called for are a direct result of poverty and poor community services. So let's talk about public safety. Public safety is providing free public services to those in need. Public safety is crisis counselors, long-term mental health services, addiction treatment, good nutritious food, after-school programs, beds for the homeless. Public safety is daring to be creative, compassionate enough to imagine alternative solutions, keeping folks connected to the community with their families instead of in prison. Public safety is not the police. The budget states that they need to make cuts due to overspending last year. They proposed cutting the Urbana Free Library by $500,000. I have suggested where they could find $11.2 million to fund actual public safety programs. Reject this budget and defund the police.
Next up is Austin Hoffman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, my name is Austin Hoffman. I live in Urbana in Ward 5. I'm speaking today to urge the council to drastically change the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 by redistributing funds allocated for the Urbana Police Department towards things our communities actually need. Ever since the brutal and unjust arrest of Miss Aaliyah Lewis on April 10th, we have been showing up each week demanding real change and an end to racist police terror. And each week, we have heard from this council about its supposed commitments to realizing such a future. Now is the time to take steps towards doing so by aligning the city's budget with its professed progressive values. No more half measures, no more hollow platitudes. We must defund UPD and invest in our communities. According to a June 18th interview by Smile Politely, council members Brown, Roberts, and Miller are already in favor of taking these steps. Ms. Hersey, although she said she was undecided about whether or not to defund the police, said that if a law enforcement budget is excessive, and as we've already seen tonight, the public clearly believes it is, funds could be diverted to serve the mentally ill. Mayor Marlin also said she was undecided, but provided this commentary, and I quote, "For many years in this country, we have chosen to expand the role of policing rather than provide equitable access to healthcare, education, housing, income, and opportunity. I believe reliance on law enforcement agencies to shoulder that social burden should be reduced, and that role should be assumed by other systems that will meet the needs of the people," end quote. I emphatically agree with you here, Mayor Marlin. However, the budget as it currently stands does not at all reflect those beliefs. How can you say these things and at the same time give a third of the general operating funds to police while leaving only 5.2% for community development and a paltry $73,000 for social services? How can you say this and take money away from our schools to fund the fire department when you could just as easily take it from the overflowing coffers of the UPD? How can you claim to believe this when at every turn you have chosen to empower a police force with a well-documented history of discriminating against and over-policing Black communities and communities of color in Urbana? If a budget is a moral document, then this one is simply unconscionable. I want to thank those of you who have spoken out in support of defunding the UPD and reimagining public safety in Urbana, and I urge those of you who are undecided on the matter to follow suit. If you allow this budget to pass as is, you will confirm what a large portion of this community already assumes to be true, which is that you care more about cops and their bloated salaries and their militarized weaponry than Black lives, Black opportunities, and Black futures. I hope today you will finally prove us wrong. Thank you.
Next up is John Drobny.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
I'm an Urbana resident. 2 weeks ago when I marched in Champaign, we chanted, defund the police. I've seen a lot of elected officials, analysts, journalists, people on Twitter and Facebook with various qualifications or lack thereof, bending over backwards to turn that into reform the police. But that's not what that means. It means defund the police. It means take that money away from the Urbana Police Department and give it back to the community to whom it belongs. The key principle of ethical policing is that policing is done only with the consent of the community. When you hear hundreds of voices shouting in unison, defund the police, we are not asking you to reform the police. We are not saying give the police more of our money. We are not saying more implicit bias training or more de-escalation training. We are saying defund the police. We withdraw our consent to be policed. We don't want them in our community. Police aren't just brutalizing people in Minneapolis or LA or Chicago or New York. They are doing it all over the country. They do it here. They did it in April when the police came to arrest Aaliyah Lewis's boyfriend following a domestic dispute. She shouted at them from a distance. They said she approached them. They said she was the aggressor. They arrested her. She was charged with aggravated battery, 3 counts. She spent a week in jail and has a hearing tomorrow. But if it weren't for the videos, that would be it. She would be the criminal and the heroic police had saved the day. But that's not what happened. When I watched the videos for her arrest, I was disturbed. I watched a large man with a gun grab her. When she tried to twist away, I watched 3 large men with guns tackle her to the ground. One of them shouts, "Stop resisting, stop resisting," at a woman pinned to the ground, screaming in pain. One of them has an assault weapon which swings wildly over her body. You need to act like a lady. Excuse me? Just relax, ma'am, okay? He shouts when a bystander asks him to get off of her so she can breathe. I don't want this. Can you, all of you, watch this video and tell us that you want this? That you want more of this? That you like this? That you want to give them more of our money? Who does this serve? Who does this protect? I conclude with, when we say defund the police, we mean defund the police. We don't want this anymore. Reject the budget. Thank you.
Next up is Megan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your full name for the record, please?
Yeah, Megan McDonald. Is this just for the budget or is this like?
This is the budget hearing.
All right, I mean, I guess it's all related, but I'll save it. Sorry, I'll wait till the next.
Okay. Urbana resident. Urbana resident. Can you please unmute? Urbana resident, can you state your name for the record?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Alana Ackerman. I'm a resident of Urbana. I would like to request that the City Council reevaluate and revise the proposed annual budget that is under consideration. According to some sources of information, 21% of the annual budget is planned to be allocated toward policing, while only 12% is planned to be allocated for community development. According to other sources, up to almost 33% of the general operating funds are set to be allocated toward policing, while only 5.2% of general operating funds are set to be allocated toward community development. Regardless of which set of numbers we are looking at, they are unacceptable either way. I know the City Council says that it wants to prioritize public safety, but public safety doesn't come from policing, as many others have said before me today and many other days. Public safety doesn't come from putting almost a third of a city's budget toward a system that we know is founded upon controlling and punishing Black communities and individuals. If you really want to make Urbana safer, if you really want to contribute to public safety, you do this by investing in people and in communities. I don't know specifically what the City Council means by community development. I think I would like to learn more about that, and I would like to hear more from the council about what community development means and what exactly that money goes toward. But either way, policing is not the answer. A budget is a reflection of a city's values. A budget reflects what a city wants to foster and what a city wants to build up. And a budget also reflects what a city doesn't value and what a city doesn't prioritize or consider important. What I see in this budget is disinvestment in communities, and I see the prioritization of the control and punishment of Black communities. I encourage the City Council to reconsider and reevaluate its priorities. I ask that it listen to the people that it represents, and I ask that it make the necessary changes to the proposed budget that the people of Urbana are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Chong.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong, a resident of Urbana. I saw on the agenda tonight that there will be a discussion on UPD body camera policy regarding use, access, and retention. Civilian access to body camera footage is a key component of police oversight and police accountability. However,
Ms. Chong, this is the hearing for the budget. Can you wait to make your comments during the public input for the council meeting?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry. Yeah, I will. Okay.
Thank you. I want to make sure we get everyone in. Ben Jocelyn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. How wonderful. My name is Ben Jocelyn. I live here in Urbana, was born here in Urbana. And my comments about the budget are as follows. I want to put it in the context of the global outcry for justice, where folks are calling for the defunding of the police department. Seattle cut its police budget by 50%. Minneapolis is disbanding its police department entirely. LA has cut their police department by over $100 million. And locally, the current city council and mayor have increased our police budget by more than 20% over the last couple of years. And I find this to be antithetical to justice, antithetical to progress, and I find that it needs to be changed. So I'm hoping that you will please listen to the local, national, and global leaders calling for the defunding of the police and reduce the 2020-2021 police budget by 50% of the current proposal to $5.6 million instead of $11.2 million. I'm hoping that you will hire a full-time person with full salary and additional budget to pay community leaders and professionals as they develop a strategy to get rid of our police department over the next 5 years. I'm hoping that you will commit to the demands of the new Champaign County Anti-Racist Coalition. You'll withdraw your contract from the school district to have police in schools, which will also affect the budget. Do you put the money towards mental health services that our community dearly needs? Do you put money into a robust and sustained gun buyback program? Do you put money into jobs programs to help people get through this terrible recession? Jobs programs are also proven to reduce crime much more effectively than the police, just as an FYI. Please increase your social service spending since it's currently less than $1 million, which means that you're currently proposing a budget that is willing to spend more than 10 times as much money controlling and punishing people instead of supporting them. That is gross. Social service spending should focus on housing, childcare, healthcare, food support, and reentry programs, among others. So there are lots of good ways to proven ways to reduce crime and increase quality of life. When you look at your budget and the priorities of this town, I really hope you take that into account and do the things that people need instead of doing things that destroy people's lives. Thank you very much.
Next up is Bo Barber.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to say my name is Bo Barber. I'm from Ogden, Illinois. I know I'm not in Urbana, and I apologize in advance for not being a former UPD cop who currently lives outside of the state. But as someone who commutes to UIUC campus, where I work, as many others like me do from the rural area, how your police department treats its own city citizens is how they will treat all people who come through this city. Will they beat my friends in the Black community when they could have just talked things out instead of using violence and brutalizing people like Aaliyah Lewis? While we're on the topic of Aaliyah Lewis, get the charges dropped against her. This should have been something that should have been solved 2 months ago. Instead, you've come up with excuses and sided with the oppressor. As some of the people have already said in here, what your budget looks like is what your values look like. And right now you value violence in the community over actually helping those in the community. You needed to fund the police and invest in helping those that are the most vulnerable. This not only keeps people out of jails, but this also helps to grow the community instead of making them the next victims that will be thrown in jail and potentially infected with the virus that we're currently experiencing in this pandemic. You need to start investing in the people rather than the people who will brutalize them. I'm sorry I'm not as eloquent as some of the other people in this, but I know a lot of people will make a lot of very good comments. One thing I wanted to point out was, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, it was the CPRB meeting. One of you pointed out, taser deployments aren't that serious of a matter and no one is really worried about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I hope that I am wrong, because Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta was shot for firing a taser at an officer. Several officers claim, oh, he fired a taser, and that is a deadly weapon. It's less lethal, but it can still be a lethal weapon. First off, Rayshard should be alive right now, and the cops should have just let him go. However, this points to the fact that what we've been saying for years is that tasers are dangerous weapons, yet your comments from the previous meetings seem to conflict with your knowledge on this. So then it brings the question about you appropriating more funds to the police when you clearly do not fully understand about what is happening during policing. So I would not be putting more money towards something that I do not fully understand about, except I do know from what I've experienced through many friends in this community and many people who have come and spoken in these councils, that you should not be putting more funds to the police. Any of you who vote for this budget should follow Councilmember Eric Jacobson's path and resign. From your behavior, I can only conclude how you would have behaved as members of the Minneapolis City Council. So I need to ask, why would you have exonerated George Floyd's murderer and then given him a promotion? I'm just curious as to why some of you seem to would have been okay with that. Thank you.
Evelyn B. Underwood. Dr. Underwood, can you unmute?
I'm trying.
We can
you
hear
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank God. Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Praise God. Oh my. I'm asking, oh, can you hear me? Because I hear something, I see something coming on that doesn't look like me. Can you see me? You won't be able to see me, right?
Right, but we can hear you.
Okay. I'm asking that you reduce the budget for the police department. I'm not saying because that word is messing everybody up. So I'm not going to say that word. I'm going to say reduce the budget for the police department, divest in the police department, and reinvest in our mental health, our youth, our education, and other entities that can take care of a lot of these problems. Thank you very much for your consideration. Amen.
Thank you. Bijal Patel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so this is Bijal Patel. I live in Urbana, have for the past few years, or I guess 4 years now. Like everyone else, or like a lot of people, I want to agree and say, you know, I think that it's probably a good idea to reduce the budget going to the police right now. But there's one specific item which I just wanted to bring up, probably for hopefully one of the council members to follow up on and see. I'm not sure if this has been mentioned to you all before, but I was looking through the IDOT traffic stop records. And one thing that kind of jumped out at me is for section 5.2 about dog sniffs, basically. So dog sniffs is referring to, you know, when the police bring a dog that, you know, that's trained to detect drugs and things like that. So in the report, it says that the dog was used in less than 1% of all traffic stops, but it alerted 96% of the time, and contraband was found 63% of the time. So out of 96% of the time, so basically the dog alerts every single time the dog sees the car almost. Out of that, 63% of the time they were actually able to find a substance. I mean, to me, that seems like it's, you know, it seems kind of unreasonable, because basically what that's saying is, if we're using the dog for probable cause and the dog alerts every single time, then essentially you're just saying, okay, well, the police officer can just judge whether there's probable cause. And if we're going to do that, we should, I think, be honest and say that. So I would say, you know, one particular way to help with the budget would be to sort of eliminate the use of police dogs, at least for traffic stops. But I don't know if there's any other useful purpose. So I hope one of the council members can follow up on this and maybe get some more information. Because in the report itself, it's kind of, the only reason they give for this discrepancy between, you know, 96% of the time it alerts and 63% of the time it seems justified, is they give a kind of implausible argument that, hey, probably in the cases where the dog alerts but there's not actually drugs found, the drugs might be just so small we can't see them. Which, I mean, to me, I mean, that seems kind of implausible. So anyway, so I hope this is something that you all are able to follow up on.
Next up is Allison, is it Cesar? Allison?
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, beautiful. So as an Urbana citizen, as a PhD student at the university, I'm calling on the city council to immediately reallocate funds meant for the police department, as many of the previous commenters have said, and to reinvest them in community development, in education initiatives, in mental health initiatives. I'd like to point out that we are in the middle of a global respiratory pandemic, and that police across the nation have responded to unrest with tear gas, a chemical weapon banned in theaters of war by both the Geneva Protocol and the UN Chemical Weapons Convention, in police departments across the country, including, according to first-person witnesses who have spoken to me, in our county. have responded to protests, peaceful protests, by escalating and by using a Geneva Convention banned chemical weapon. These militarization of the police is a problem, and if you think that increasing funding for a police department is going to do anything but put more outdated and banned military grade weapons in the hands of police to be used against citizens who are exercising their right to peaceful protest, you don't know anything about police. I'd like to encourage everyone on this council to think about what a vote for an increase in policing and an increase in police budget means for the people who you are meant to represent in this city, for the brown and black communities that you are meant to represent in this city, for all of the students, the men, the women, the people of non-binary gender, everybody who is meant to be protected by these police and who are instead being terrorized. All right, in the middle of the pandemic, a vote for an increase in the police department is a vote for a decrease in funding for critical public health services. A vote for an increase in police funding is a vote for a decrease in funding meant to alleviate the economic pressures put on our community. A vote for an increase in police funding is frankly grossly irresponsible of anybody on this council and any other lawmaker across our state and across our country. So think about what you are doing and what you are saying to your constituents. Think about the fact that you are putting so-called law and order, which is actually police terrorism, above the health, economic, educational, and mental health needs of your constituents. Thank you.
Jay Monson.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just have one suggestion. I don't know if you've looked at Michael Tubbs, the mayor of Stockton, California, who's a young African-American mayor, and he's made incredible strides in producing public safety in his community through fighting anti-poverty. And I would just really recommend that the council members look him up and research that option, because it's, I think Urbana is in a position to do some really positive radical change and defund and reallocate funds from the police department to funds that would actually produce public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart Levy.
Thank you. So I'd like to speak with respect to the proposed budget, in particular increased funding for police services, as other people are. I'm remembering a council comment from Eric Jacobson a year or two ago. Eric, you'd been looking at trends in calls to the police, and he noted that the calls addressing crimes were holding fairly steady, but there was an increase in demand for police services, and that was coming from calls addressing people who were somehow in distress. I'm betting that's still the case. We have other kinds of people and other kinds of services that are specialized for dealing with distress, or better, preventing people from becoming distressed in the first place. I'm talking about people like social workers and services like detox centers or reentry programs or libraries. So given that, expanding the police budget while decreasing support for social services and the library isn't only morally wrong. Even if you look at it only in economic terms, it's a stupid misallocation of resources. We've been seeing demonstrations across the country, including here in Urbana, protesting against unaccountable police violence against especially people of color, and including police violence here. I'm talking about the case of Aaliyah Lewis most recently, but there are many others in Champaign and Urbana and nearby. It's not, yeah. I know several of you on the council have participated in some of those protests. Sure, that's good. And the statement of 10 principles that I see appears on tonight's council agenda, they look nice too. But it is the budget that shows where the city's priorities lie, not attendance at demonstrations. Council, I hope that you will not approve the budget as is written tonight, but we'll take an opportunity to revise it, even if it means that you have to run a few weeks past the July 1st target date. If you assume that you can just continue along the current path and double down on ever-increasing reliance on the police to put down whatever and to deal with whatever problem, you're making a political mistake. Something that really strikes me about the demonstrations that have been going on is that there have been demonstrations against unaccountable police violence, police brutality, in places where I never would have expected one. I'm not talking about like St. Joseph and Monticello. You know, we're used to seeing demonstrations in Champaign and Urbana, but St. Joseph? If you double down on what you're doing now, I think you're making a moral mistake and an economic mistake and also a political mistake. Thank you for your attention.
Natalie DeClercq.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
As a community member who has lived in Urbana for the majority of my adult life, since moving here as a student in 2009, I admit I have been mostly ignorant to my local government until recently. I've always thought of Urbana as a progressive community where residents are generally caring and open-minded, educated on important issues, and pushing for change where it's needed most. It's why I came back and why I'm still here. However, the more I read and learn, the more city council meetings I attend, it's clear the public's priorities and sense of urgency are not shared by our elected officials. This budget proposal does not reflect the voices and values of the community that I know and love. I am one of many begging for you to reject this proposal that increases the already bloated budget of the Urbana Police Department, who still has not taken accountability for the violent assault of Aaliyah Lewis and continues to profile and arrest Black residents of Urbana in disproportionate rates. The community will not be served by cuts to public education or increased policing through a system we cannot trust. For our city council to believe so is harmful and irresponsible. Reject this proposal and reallocate Urbana Police Department funding towards social services and programs that make housing, healthcare, childcare, education, job assistance, mental health resources, and literally anything else more accessible in the populations that need it most. You have a choice to either address underlying problems and prevent criminal behavior or throw money at a system that can only make those problems worse. We all want a safer community. Urbana Police Department's actions and patterns of racial injustice have proven that they are not on our streets to protect and serve the entire population. Stop increasing their power and protections of an abusive and prejudiced institution that operates without any repercussions. This is not the time to move slowly or skirt issues or deflect the public's demands. Send a message that you hear us and invest in programs that can swiftly and directly benefit the people of Urbana. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the council during this hearing? Danielle Chenoweth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Danielle Chenoweth. I live at 412 West Illinois Street in Urbana. I am currently the township supervisor, the Cunningham Township Supervisor. I used to serve on city council for 2 terms. Just a few things about the budget. First, budgets are moral documents. They reflect the ethical stand of any body, and more than almost any other words that are spoken, the budget really shows the priorities of a body. Based due to both 2 unprecedented circumstances we're in. One is the coronavirus, and the second is a racial justice movement, unlike anything that I've seen in my lifetime. I don't think you can plan ahead more than 3 months. I would encourage the council to extend, either approve a quarter the quarterly portion of this budget or extend your current budget and engage in a participatory budget making process. It started in Brazil. It's been used in Chicago. I attempted to implement it when I was on city council, and I really think the time is right to engage young people and new voices. I'm so heartened by the hundreds of voices, many of whose names I've never heard before, and I've lived in this town since 1995. And I want to encourage you, the new voices at the table, to know that this is really your budget, right? And that the people who are elected to serve are really speaking, you speak through them in terms of your priorities. So I know that this is a difficult moment for the council, and I want to encourage you to really also see it as a moment of opportunity to bring a lot of new perspectives into the political process. And a participatory budget process can help us really think about redefining our priorities. With regard to the police, we have already tried CPRB training, diversifying the police force. We should not stop with these things. They are essential, but not sufficient going forward. What we need is a new department that is not beholden to the FOP contract, and it's not within the police department that responds to the homeless. 4% of the jail population in a given year are homeless. It responds to crimes of poverty like stealing diapers and shoes for your child, and water and tampons, right? We need an emergency response care team without guns, without use of force policies. And I would encourage you to start working with us now to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Aiden Watson Morris.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Aiden, a graduate worker at the University of Illinois, Aiden Watson Morris for the record. As cities across the country begin to rethink their budgets in the wake of ongoing racist police violence, I'm happy to see City Council members Miller, Roberts, and Brown express their interest in defunding Urbana Police and reallocating funds for other community services, as they did in a recent Smile Politely survey. In the same piece, Mayor Marlin and Council members Hersey and Wu express an openness to the possibility. I am disappointed that members Jacobson and Colebrook refused to respond. I think that Mayor Marlin and other members expressed interest in community input on these decisions calls for another look at the city budget, which currently allocates more of the city's general operating fund to the police than to any other expenditure. The question of policing is not simply a matter of trust, but the actual form a community takes. The ongoing calls for justice for Leah Lewis, which I support, the fact that Black people are disproportionately stopped relative to Urbana's larger population, and concerns about the effectiveness of the CPRB already expressed are about structure, and budgets are moments in which communities can take new shapes, where funds can be reallocated for public education, community, and social services. I want to call on the Urbana City Council to vote on a budget that is taking community input into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council during this budget hearing? Okay, I don't see any further hands up. Lena Walker?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Lena Walker. I am currently a resident of Champaign, but as a UIUC student, I do spend a lot of my time in Urbana, and many people that I love and care about live in this community. And I sincerely hope that the council is going to listen to the input being given at these meetings, especially at this budget hearing, and not go ahead with just approving this budget outright, which currently allocates far too much money to the police department and far too little to community development and services. And I'd like to specifically make a point about what it could really mean to invest in community. I noticed when looking through the budget proposal that in the total funds so much of the community development funding comes from state and federal grants. And while state and federal grants can offer a lot of opportunities, state and federal governments also reinforce the prison industrial complex, which in this country has amounted essentially to a 400-year reign of terror and injustice over Black and Indigenous people. They reinforce it through the use of slave labor in prisons, through legislation that oppresses and criminalizes Black lives, through urban renewal projects and neighborhood revitalizations, if you can call them that disrupt and disappear Black and brown communities all over this country. Relying on state and federal grants does not allow communities to realize their full potential and truly engage all of the valuable knowledge and skills that people have to care for each other, improve their lives, and make real changes here in Urbana and all over this country. I really urge the council to consider how a different approach to our budget could put real money in the hands of communities that have an opportunity to try new things and make bold new changes to make sure that as a city and as two sister cities, we're really showing that Black lives matter, that we care, and that we believe that there's a life for people in this community beyond being over-policed, beyond being terrorized by police, and beyond being killed prematurely before people have a chance to live out their lives. I sincerely hope the council will consider this and all the comments that have been made here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Shea?
Hello.
Hello.
So-
Can you state your full name for the record?
Sure.
Please?
It's Shay Balahi. I wanted to give some input tonight about the budget and remind the council that you're sitting in your seats today because we have put you there. Your job is to represent the people in your ward. This isn't a time to make excuses and follow the same guidelines you always have. We're in a time of civil unrest and a pandemic. We have the opportunity to dismantle and rebuild our community for the better. It's unfortunate that we're in a situation we are having to fight for our lives to protect people from the rapists, killers, and abusers in our police department who are rarely prosecuted. We need to redirect funds to lift people out of poverty, provide health care and opportunities to those who have not had many opportunities in their lifetime. I also want to add that simply the act of providing these meetings on a Zoom call is racist and limiting people from being able to join in. Not all people and a lot of people of color don't have access to the internet. Defund the police, provide opportunities in the war on Black people, and save lives. Do the right thing. Black lives are in your hands. Thank you.
Next up is Alan.
Good evening, Urbana City Council. These are remarks independent from the written remarks that I had sent for the later session of the City Council this evening. I want to bring to bear not only echoing remarks for the City Council budget, but we're imminently facing an eviction tsunami. And there is something that you can do about it. I conferred with some of my friends who are tenants' rights lobbyists. And in addition to the fact that Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago is pursuing a measly 12-day extension to the eviction moratorium in lieu of the governor's executive order, you can do that or more should you choose to. And I would urge, given that over 50% of our housing are rental units, possibly even 60%, I don't remember the exact stat. So this is something that is of tantamount concern to Urbana. On top of that, it is a racial justice issue. Forgive me, I can't actually see the public comment clock. Is that on? Thank you. 2/3 nationwide, and that stat is within 5%. For Urbana, 2/3 of Black households are renter households. If you believe that Black Lives Matter, you will extend the eviction moratorium through municipal ordinance, because that eviction moratorium is expiring this Saturday, if I have the date remembered correctly. On top of this, segueing to the budget, there are a lot of existing programs that we could decide to emulate should we reduce our commitment to the police department's surplus budget in excess of what the contract requires. I've been told, for example, that the armored vehicles, the police vehicles, are replaced on the order of about every 5 years. Why not 6? Why not more? We can do a lot with the money that we would save there. Specifically, Rockford, Illinois is one of our neighboring cities. I mean, pretty far away, but they've eliminated homelessness. We should be seriously considering what significant accomplishments, not just a Band-Aid, but serious accomplishments we can have in our community if we abate the police department's burden on our budget. Lastly, the City Council is not so bound to the Fraternal Order of Police contract as they may convey. For one, there is a stipulation for discontinuation of that contract in the terms of renewal. There is no specified deadline for when that can be enacted. So should they choose to, they could abolish the police. But more importantly, you are not limited by the existing Fraternal Order of Police contract when it comes to the city budget. And also they can't strike. Have a good evening.
Next up is Becca.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Becca Opachowski, and I am a lifelong resident of Urbana, and I'm writing this evening to ask that the City Council to fund the police department by at least 50% in the budget that you're considering tonight, in order to be able to invest in programs that support community, disavow white supremacy, and truly work to create a safe and welcoming place to live. What could this look like? Money saved from the police officers in schools could be spent on social workers, support staff, teachers, supplies, and technology. Money saved from reducing the number of officers could hire city officials whose role it would be to examine progressive templates for public safety and develop a program to make that a reality in our community. Money saved from cutting the police budget could be spent on funding mental health services, affordable housing, childcare programs, food supports, job opportunities, and parks. Money could be cut from weapons, militarized vehicles, and the stock of tear gas and other dangerous chemical weapons. It could instead be spent on staffing a sustained gun buyback program and a community outreach to those affected by gun violence. Change is uncomfortable. The institutionalized partnerships that the city has with the police surely feel difficult and to unravel and for you all to unwind. But I and thousands of your constituents are asking you to envision something else for our city. Please take a moment and reflect on the community that embodies your most hopeful vision of Urbana. Does it involve well-staffed and stocked schools? Does it strive to be a leader in progressive ideas and programs? Does it ensure its citizens have homes, foods, and jobs? Does it work to destigmatize and support the mental health needs of its people? When you think on what actually makes you feel safe, I believe that these are the things that would be on anyone's list. And as our elected officials, it is your responsibility to invest money in them and not in the false idea that the police force is here to ensure safety, because the police are actually a reactionary and white supremacist force for fear and brutality. Community programs, development, and support are an answer to the problems and struggles that bring police into our lives. The budget on today's agenda is a moral document. Please vote to provide care, support, and opportunity to your neighbors. Give 50% less to a force of violence and fear in our lives. Remember that you can vote no on this budget. The city will not stop if it's forced to take more time to address these changes that its people are asking for. I would also like you to remember that police brutality and violence is happening right here in Urbana, and it is your duty to stand against this and to start that by demanding that the state's attorney drop charges against Aaliyah Lewis. Thank you, and for listening to my comments tonight.
Miriam Larson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Miriam Larson. I'm a lifelong Urbana resident. I want to speak just briefly to say I encourage you to defund the police by 50%. I want to remind you that we have a wealth of knowledge, expertise, and community connectedness, and we've seen it in particular in responses to COVID, in organizing an uprising that supports racial justice and a new kind of community safety. The Juneteenth event this past Friday was organized by largely new leadership in this town with deep knowledge of experiences of incarceration, but also of restorative justice, of building youth programs and connecting with young people to do positive and creative things. We have a moment to reframe community safety. And as local researcher Ming Kuo points out, green spaces are one thing that we know both reduces violence and improves mental health. And I think one thing we can all, or that I feel proud of as an Urbana resident, and I think we can all take pride in is the wealth of green space we have here in Champaign-Urbana, and in particular in Urbana. And a bigger challenge we face is not only the pandemic, but the threat of climate change. So why not use this moment to reframe community safety as an opportunity to grow even more trees and expand our green spaces, put youth to work, taking out invasive species, or building gardens, or setting up murals next to gardens, and reclaiming our neighborhoods in a way that takes public safety in a whole new direction, but that also helps young people have a role and speak up against climate change, because we are going to need to face that even here in Champaign-Urbana, where we may feel safe from the impacts. Thank you very much for listening to my comments.
Taryn K. Vaughn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, okay, well, I'm gonna make this as short as possible because you have other things to do, but I want to be very clear, and this is something that's been said already, but I think you need another reminder. You serve us, and we are asking you to do one thing: defund the police. That's simple. To ignore this demand is not only a gross violation of your job as city representatives meaning that you serve us, it is evidence of an astounding level of arrogance. Or perhaps is it greed and lust for power? Or just racism? Or perhaps it's all of the above. If you want to avoid such accusations, if you want to regain your hold over the moral high ground which you've lost, quite frankly, if you want to do your job, you must listen to us and defund the police. It is that simple. And also, this is key, drop the charges against Aaliyah Lewis. It is quite frankly baffling to me that this hasn't already been done, given how clear it is that her arrest, if we call what we see in the video, which is essentially an assault, an arrest, it is a clear example of racist police brutality, and the fact that the charges have not been dropped. Again, I'm not sure if it is arrogance, greed, a desire for power, or racism that is causing you to allow those charges to stand. Do your job, do what's right, listen to us. Otherwise, I'm not sure why you're sitting in those chairs right now. Thank you.
Next up is Christopher.
Hello. I'm going to save most of my comments for the general city council meeting, but I did have a few things to say about the budget. I heard one other person mention the use of K-9 units, and I think that's an easy one for you to just completely eliminate. We don't need K-9 units in Urbana. They're just not that useful, and they're expensive, and I don't think that Urbana police officers have demonstrated the integrity and personal responsibility to employ such a tool, where it does seem like they're probably just using it to invent probable cause. So let's just get rid of that one. That one's easy. The next one is, I think you guys should completely nix this license plate recognition system. Again, there's no indication that the city of Urbana, or I don't know if this is going to be used along with the police department. There's no indication that they are going to use this responsibly. I don't want the city to own a camera operated license plate recognition system. I don't want them to own a database. It's $46,000 and $11.5 thousand every year after that. Let's just get rid of that. We don't want that. I don't know anyone who wants that. So I'll issue the rest of my comments at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I do want to acknowledge everyone who has submitted an email. I'm not going to be able to read them all aloud, but again, as stated in the public input guidelines, every comment will be incorporated into the hearing record and will be available to the public and will be part of the permanent record. Most of the comments very much reflected the sort of input that we've received during this meeting tonight. So we have heard from Valerie O'Brien, Casey Lee Castanaga, Nicholas Stein, Bronwyn Kane, Alana Ackerman, Aaron Long, Natalie DeClerc, Kelsey Langley, Brooke Armstrong, Logan Middleton, Megan Miracle, Brian Moteshed, Jamie Keener, Nancy Dietrich, Sarah Sauce, Emily Potch, Aram Lee, David Cisneros, River Brown, Michael Johnson, Kathleen McGowan, Rebecca Obuchowski, Ron Kester, Caitlin Kingsley, Catherine Majewski, Danielle McFarland, Ben Jocelyn, Lillian Wright. We also heard from Aiden Watson, C.G. Esterbrook, Elizabeth Simpson, Elizabeth Matsushita, Laura Job, Marion Morris, Brian Dunn, Drake Maxson, Chelsea Birchmeyer, Richard Miskey, Elise Lanker, Sarah Page, Lila Leopold, Miriam Twarek Hofstetter, Randy Vale, Veronica Severini, Leslie Owens, Marcy Goldstein, John Hayes, Anna Asplund, and that's I had as of 6:55 tonight. If there more came in before 7, we will incorporate them as well. Out of respect for our guests from the NAACP tonight, I wanted to move on.
There's one more hand raised, Diane, if you didn't see that.
Oh, John McNally, sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so I'm just going to read the email that I sent to you. It's, Dear Mayor and City Council, you are in a position of power and it is time to decide which side of history you are going to be on. We are watching what you do, we are listening to what you say, and we will remember when we vote. When you go to sleep tonight, will you rest easy knowing that you did the right thing? When you look back on your time spent in this role, will you have made a positive impact on our community? Do you feel that our tax dollars are best spent arresting people and furthering the prison for profit system that overwhelmingly targets people of color? Or is there a better way? In this pivotal time in history, I feel that we must address our societal ills with a different approach than militarized police brutality. Police officers are not social workers, police officers are not mental health professionals, and they should not be asked to fill these roles. I am asking you to use our tax dollars wisely to create a better tomorrow for everyone in our community. Therefore, I am asking you to spend less money on the police and more money on our community task force that are better equipped at handling nonviolent and non-emergency incidents in our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to adjourn this public hearing.